What's good? Welcome back to the Forever I Love Atlanta Sports Podcast. It's your boy, The Don, here with another episode of Don's Favorite. Got my two co-hosts with me, King and Tyrone. What's good with y'all?
What's good, man? It's a great day.
Yes, it is.
We got a good verdict today, and the Hawks are currently winning. What more can you ask for?
You can't really ask for anything else. Had a good conversation with Dawn earlier with Miss Jenna. Hey, man, it's a great day.
And then we got Michael Rothstein on. He is the new beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons for ESPN. What's good, Michael?
Hey, thanks for having me. By the way, that intro, that opening was awesome. Like I've done so many podcasts in Detroit, which is where I've been before, and then before that, that's the best one I've seen.
Thank you, man. I created that, edited it, and performed it myself, man. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. I like when somebody appreciates my work. Thank you.
Likewise, it's the little things. Let's be honest. It's the little things that people see and that people know, and when they notice those things, that's what matters.
Yes, that's correct, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. Hey, if you're new to the channel, y'all already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share this content out with Atlanta Sports Fanatics, and hit us up in the comment section. As always, come holler at your hometown sports podcast. All right. So, before you came here to Atlanta, all right, you just got hired, what was it, like a month ago?
Well, so that sort of. I've been with ESPN for almost, I think, a little over a decade. I started covering Michigan for ESPN, and then after a couple of years, I moved over to the NFL when they started the NFL Nation, and I covered the Lions for 8 years, and then I am moving to Atlanta now, obviously, and I might as well just just want to start by saying this, and I did another podcast yesterday and said the same thing, that I knew Vaughn McClure for well before the two of us were colleagues at ESPN. My hope is to just live up to the job that Vaughn did in Atlanta. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Vaughn. Vaughn is one of the reasons I'm actually still in the business. We covered Notre Dame together back in the day. And, I'm really excited about the opportunity to be coming to Atlanta. And obviously I absolutely hate the reason that the job is open, or the job was open in the first place, and just wanted to kind of get that out there right at the top, because Vaughn means a lot to me still, and I just hope I can live up to the reporting that he did and the writing that he did in Atlanta. And one last thing, and I'll throw in a quick plug here, and it's probably the only time I'll ever plug anything in the entirety, hopefully, of the times that I'm on your show, but the Vaughn McClure Foundation is set up to help people in his hometown of Chicago, help students in his hometown of Chicago at his alma mater, Northern Illinois University, where they're trying to do some good things for kids and for college kids there. So if you're so inclined, if you liked Vaughn's work, think about maybe giving a donation to the Vaughn McClure Foundation.
All right, plug away, man. Stuff like that, charity, like nonprofit organizations, charity. Like, we love that. Like, we will stand behind that. So Vaughn McClure Foundation, you guys, type that in Google, and whatever you can give, like $5, $10, even $1, just give it. Because he did do some great stuff, and I know McClure's background. He was from Chicago, and if you know anything about Chicago, it's a rough city. So I know he did a lot of stuff in the inner city. So guys, make sure y'all, if y'all can, donate to Vaughn McClure Foundation. He has been missed here in Atlanta, covering the Falcons. So I know you worked for ESPN for a while, because I know you covered the Lions, and then you was brought here now to cover the Falcons. So I know that transition is kind of different. Pretty much you was with the Lions, and the Lions are going through the same thing the Falcons is going through. New GM, new head coach, and then you came here, and we going through the same stuff. So tell us about that.
Yeah, in some ways they are very, very similar scenarios, right? New GM, new head coach, as you alluded to. Really, the only difference is the quarterback situation, where the Lions traded Matthew Stafford to the Rams. They got back Jared Goff and a boatload of draft picks, where the Falcons obviously still have Matt Ryan, are going to have him for 2021, possibly for 2022, and then we'll kind of see what happens. That's really the only difference when I look at the two teams as far as like the overarching macro scenarios. I think the Lions are in a bit more of a rebuild. Their roster is not nearly as good as the Falcons roster is because, let's be honest, the Falcons have at least one Hall of Famer on their roster and maybe one more, maybe arguably two more, depending how the rest of Grady Jarrett's career goes. So you look at those things, and I think the Falcons are in a better position than the Lions, but definitely similar scenarios in that they're both, I think, going to be looking to the future maybe a little bit more than the present, although I expect the Falcons to probably still be having their toes a bit more in the present than the Lions will be.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I wasn't going to try to talk about the quarterback situation yet.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm going to wait. That's a juicy topic. I'm waiting because we still got more people calling in the live chat. Everybody in the live chat, what's good? Let us know what y'all think about the show so far and tell us hello. If I have any questions, please shoot hit us up. We got Michael Rothstein on the show with us. He is the ESPN beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons. All right. So your thoughts on Terry Fortnite and Arthur Smith?
Yeah, listen, I'm going to be very blunt. I've been covering this team for all of 3 weeks, maybe 4. I have yet to be in a press conference or any setting with Terry Fontenot or Arthur Smith. So I know them mostly by just having conversations with other people around the league and by reputation. I like what Terry Fontenot did in free agency. And while that might sound a little bit weird because the Falcons didn't really do much, but considering the cap situation that they were in and the reality of, like we were talking about just before, of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, veteran players who frankly have massive contracts, and we'll see what happens to them in the medium term future. You didn't really want to tie yourself, if you're the Falcons, to any player for a long term because you don't know what your franchise is going to look like a year from now. So I like what Terry Fontenot did. I thought he brought in 2 pretty good veteran safeties. I covered Daron Harmon in Detroit last year.
I was going to bring him up.
Yeah, he still has good closing speed now. That defense he was in, it's tough to really judge anybody in it because it was the worst defense that I've covered, and I've covered college football, I've covered the NFL, I've covered D3 football. Like it was the worst defense I saw comparative to the talent that they had on the roster. And that's not really the fault of the players. A lot of that was schematic, and obviously they fired Matt Patricia 3/4 of the way through the season. So I think if he still has that closing speed, I think he will be a good player in the back end for Atlanta. And I like some of the other moves that they've made as well. Mike Davis, I'm curious to see how they really use him as a running back. I thought they added a couple of nice pieces, depth pieces mostly, at other positions as well. And the draft's going to be super important for them. But right now, listen, you have to like what Terry Fontenot did because he did what he could with what he had to work with. Arthur Smith, I don't think anyone can judge anything about Arthur Smith at the moment other than to say, listen, he was one of the most popular guys out there. He was a guy that a lot of teams wanted to interview. A lot of teams wanted to interview twice, and the Falcons got him. So that was a high-level coach or a highly sought-after coach that they got, and that's a good thing. Now, let's be real. The highly sought-after coach in every cycle doesn't always work out. Like, if you paid attention to the NFL for any length of time, you know that. Like sometimes the guy who isn't the highly sought after guy, like Frank Reich, for instance, in Indianapolis, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, ends up being the best guy for that team. I think Arthur Smith is a very good coach. I'm very curious to see how he handles an entire team. I'm very curious to see how he handles life, frankly, outside of Tennessee, because that's where the majority of his career has been. But it wasn't like a New England situation where it was under one head coach. It was under 3 or 4 head coaches, and he was deemed valuable enough to keep around over and over. And if you know anything about coaching changes, that doesn't happen. Maybe one guy sticks around or 2 for continuity's sake, and he's been that guy over and over and over again. I think is a pretty good sign. I like what I read in Jeff Schultz's article on The Athletic about how he plans on scheming and how he plans on being unpredictable offensively. Every coach will say that, but I liked what I read out of that, and I think that there's some potential there. And to me, the most curious part about Arthur Smith is we have seen his offense in Tennessee, and it was a very run-heavy, run-based offense with Derrick Henry, who 2,000-yard rusher in Tennessee. You look at Atlanta's personnel, and I don't really see how you can do that considering what you have. I mean, you have 2 number 1 receivers in Calvin Ridley and in Julio Jones. You have a quarterback who was an NFL MVP in Matt Ryan. I have to imagine they're going to throw the ball more, and I'm really curious to see how Arthur Smith translates what he likes to do offensively into what the Falcons have on offense. But right now, he hasn't even coached a practice yet. So to make any judgment on him is way, 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 way premature.
Yeah. And going back to the hot commodity coach, like Arthur Smith, yeah, he was one of them. But I remember very vividly back in October and November, the hot coach was Eric Bieniemy. Everybody wanted Eric Bieniemy. And he didn't even get a job. He got interviewed by a lot of teams, but no one picked him up. So, and I've said this, months ago before Smith was hired. I said, if we do hire offensive-minded coach, because I was against an offensive-minded coach, but I did have the thought of, if we do, I would rather have Arthur Smith or Brian Dabble from Buffalo. So they hired one of the guys that I scouted, which is fine. I want to go back to last season because you saw this Falcons team last year play the Lions, correct?
I did.
All right.
I did see that game.
So tell us what the good and the bad and the ugly from that game. I know you looked at it from a Lions point of view, but from a Falcons point of view, you covering this team now, and but we know there's a new regime. But just looking at the players that we had, and some of them are gone, but we still have a good core that's still here.
Yeah, I'm trying to jog back the memory a little bit because I didn't travel at all last year, as none of our ESPN reporters did because of the coronavirus pandemic. So I actually watched that game on television, and truthfully, the thing that stands out the most about that game is the last 90 seconds of it, because of Todd Gurley falling and Lions defenders celebrating a touchdown, which sure, and then what happened at the end of the game. And I like AJ Terrell a lot. I think that there's a lot of potential there. Matt Ryan, I think, is a very, very good quarterback. Julio Jones, when he's healthy, and I know last year that was, a question at times, is still one of the top 2-3 receivers, I think, in the game. And I've been impressed. Again, this was one game. You're asking out of this one game, right? For whatever reason, and again, I haven't watched that game in months. I remember Russell Gage really standing out a little bit. And I think he's a great number 3 receiver to have. And I mean, Gurley's obviously not here anymore, but I thought that he eventually got going a little bit toward the end. So that's really what stood out. I would be lying, honestly, if I said I remembered a lot about the Falcons from that game, because part of that too was if the Lions had lost that game, the whole season, Matt Patricia was on, job security watch, for lack of a better term. So everything kind of got viewed through the prism of Matt Patricia and of Matthew Stafford and of what was going to happen with the future of that team. So I didn't see it. I don't remember a ton about the Falcons. I mean, I can tell you a lot about the Lions from that game, but I just can't tell you a lot about the Falcons yet. And honestly, now with so much of the roster largely turned over, like you said, except for some of the core, and a new GM and a new head coach and, largely a new coaching staff, I just don't know how much you can even take from that game or from a lot of last season and look at it into next season, because so much of it is going to be new. I do like, I like some of the pieces the Falcons have, like we talked about on offense. And I think on defense, like I said, Terrell and Deion Jones and obviously Grady Jarrett. And I'm curious to see whether Dean Pease can unlock the Dante Fowler that we saw with the Rams. Because if he can do that, then I think that some of the Falcons' pass rush issues could be solved. And those are the pieces that I think that if you are the Falcons, you're going to rely on this year, and in some cases build around for the future, largely on defense with some of those players. However, they need a lot more players on defense.
Yeah, I agree. Now, tell us. We talked about Mike Davis, the running back core. Tell us your thoughts on the Falcons releasing Ito Smith.
Yeah, I mean, like I was surprised at first, but again, realize I'm a month into covering this team. I am not into the nuance of it yet, and I just want to preface everything I say with that. All right, like I just want to be very straight with everybody here, but I was mildly surprised just because I think why get rid of a guy that you know can be somewhat productive before training camp even? That said, if you know you're not going to use them, right? And you know, like, hey, we're moving on from this guy. He's not going to be part of the offense. Why hold on to him? And to me, releasing Ito Smith, granted, somewhat came with the signing of Cordarrelle Patterson, and we'll see how they use Cordarrelle Patterson as a running back or receiver, maybe a little bit of both. Obviously, supreme return skills, but to me, it more signified that maybe they plan on picking up a running back in the draft, which I thought they might do anyway. But more so now, maybe that becomes more of a need higher up, where maybe on day 2, or if they trade back at a 4, and have even more picks, maybe they go and get a running back. Like, let's be honest, if Travis Etienne or Najee Harris is sitting there in the second round, I think you have the conversation. I'm not a big believer in taking a running back in the second round. I never have been. The Lions did it 3 times in my 8 years covering the team. But I think that those guys, especially in an Arthur Smith offense, if you're building for the future, both of those players can do really, really good things with what Arthur Smith could be planning for them. And I think Mike Davis is a good player in that role as well, but I don't expect Mike Davis to be Derrick Henry, because let's be honest, at some point you have to go with what their career has done so far. And Mike Davis has had a good career, but he hasn't had a consistent 1,000-yard back type career, because if he did, he wouldn't be signing a 2-year reasonable deal with the Falcons. That's just the truth. So I think it's a room that they're still figuring out, and I think that frankly they have a lot of young backs in that room. And my guess is that based off of watching the film, and again, this is just my speculation, based off of watching the film, they saw more of what they liked out of those backs than what they saw out of Ito Smith. That would be my only guess as to why they maybe let go of Ito Smith at this point. But again, I think that you're going to just see a lot of roster turnover over the next, 12 to 15 months.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you.
What ISO Joe says, I would agree with that a little bit too. I mean, I like Olsen a lot. I remember him in college. If given the chance, I think he's got a shot to be at least that second, third back.
Yes.
And that's maybe what they saw. Maybe they saw that on tape. Maybe when they watched it, or maybe when they were doing scouting, because obviously Terry Fontenot, was part of the scouting process. He was the pro personnel guy, but the way that it works in New Orleans is everybody's kind of involved a little bit with everything. So maybe that was a guy that maybe they liked. Maybe that's a guy Arthur Smith liked in Tennessee, and just didn't get a chance to take him. And now it's like, well, I know how I want to use him.
All right. Y'all have anything else to say on the Ito Smith thing?
I just want to say he first by said he agreed with me. So always agrees with me, I'm cool with it.
I will say, I think I've been saying, it's the film. I think, like you said, it's the film.
It's a film.
They like. That's the only thing I could think of it being, because Ito's been here for 3 years now, or 3 or 4, and I mean he's been our number 2 back for that time. So for them to cut him, it has to be something film wise that they like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's generally what it is.
Yeah.
Or frankly, I mean, his contract wasn't big, but sometimes it comes down to money. And if again, maybe that you're not going to necessarily keep this guy, and the Falcons, listen, they need cap space. everywhere. Like they just do. And if you want to bring in a guy like Cordarrelle Patterson and frankly a guy like Deron Harmon, and you need to make room somewhere, well, you have a lot of running backs already on the roster, and you have to make room somewhere. And Ito Smith is probably and you're not going to obviously cut the guy you just signed in Mike James because Mike Davis, sorry. To me, that he was the guy that made the most sense out of the guys left in that room based off of finances as well.
Okay. All right. So we are officially 9 days away from Armageddon.
Did you just call it Armageddon?
Yes. Look, man. Look, like you said, you only been here for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So you really don't know how Falcons fans are. This fan base are, man.
Oh, I'm looking forward to learning. I'm getting a sense.
Oh man. Oh man.
Ooh. What's good, Wallace? You gonna see a lot, especially this year. This has been the worst year I think on Twitter for Falcons. Like this has just been bad.
Not even just Twitter. It's on Facebook, Instagram. It's everywhere. Just like going to barbershops, walking in town. Like I wear my Falcon stuff proudly, and like I'm oh man, I love the Falcons too. But one thing about it, man, what they need to do, they need to get rid of Matt Ryan, and I get behind the team again. I'm like, see, I can't talk to some of y'all.
So, all right, Ladon, I can speak to that a little bit because going back to what we were talking about before about Detroit, like that was literally for the last 5 years the Matthew Stafford conversation. People were like, "Oh, I've had enough of Matthew Stafford. I'm done with Matthew Stafford." And so I would actually go and like these would be conversations, and like every year I was like, Matt, and I mean, listen, I wrote some of that too, but you sat there and you're like, all right, I would start going on radio shows and start talking to fans and doing when I would do live Instagram chats and live Facebook chats. And I would start playing games of like, would you rather, which is like, would you rather have Matthew Stafford or X? And all of a sudden you start naming all these quarterbacks and they say, well, Stafford. And all of a sudden you've gone through 2/3 of the league and people are like, oh, wait. Whoops. And I feel like it's the same way with Matt Ryan, where you could have that conversation and be like, well, who would you rather have? You could even do it in the NFC South, right? Would you rather have Matt Ryan or Sam Darnold? Would you rather have Matt Ryan or I guess Jameis Winston / Taysom Hill? Would you rather have Matt Ryan or Tom Brady? Well, truthfully, you'd probably rather have Tom Brady, but
if that defense coming with us, if that time bad defense ain't coming in, no.
That's fair. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing that I think that people need to realize is like sometimes what you have is better than what's out there. And that's how I kind of feel about Matt Ryan. And I think we'll get a real good sense of what Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith feel about Matt Ryan in 9 days. Because if they take a quarterback at 4, then we all know that it's the beginning of the end for Matt Ryan. Not obviously in 2021, but I would have to imagine that 2022 would be that new quarterback. And I say that because to me, it's really hard for a team picking at 4, a team in their first draft, to take a quarterback knowing they're going to sit him for 2 years. Because the whole point of taking a rookie quarterback and building around a rookie quarterback is that rookie contract. And if you're waiting for 2 years and then you're waiting until 2023, you've burnt half of that rookie contract more or less. And you still don't know. And you still don't know if it's the guy.
And then not even just that. You brought up not even just that. You picking him in the top 5. A lot of people talking about, well, with Kansas City, they did this with Pat Mahomes. Okay, well, Kansas City was a playoff team. First off,
they traded up.
And they traded up. So they knew what they was going to do with Pat Mahomes. All right. Well, Green Bay did this with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Well, they was in the 20. They picked like 20-something both times when they picked the Jordan Love and when they picked Aaron Rodgers. And once again, they were a playoff team. They didn't have any holes on their team. They just needed that one little piece, a quarterback, to get them over the hump. Falcons, Absolutely. Right now, we have so many issues. defense, mainly defense. Next thing off that is the offensive line is not complete yet. And then you may want to get you a solid running back because Mike Davis is not the future running back in the line. Anybody knows that. So Wallace, I haven't checked out the podcast yet. I will look at it sometime this week. I'm kind of tired up.
I actually listened to that this morning on a walk before it started. So I'm still up in Michigan for another month, and it snowed today because that's just what happens apparently in Michigan in April. So before it started snowing, I actually went on a walk and listened to the Grady Jarrett podcast, the first episode of it, and it was very interesting what Ray Lewis did say about Dean Pease, in that Dean Pease is very player friendly, wants to hear from players of what they think might work. And I would, if you haven't listened to that podcast, I thought it was really well done, especially from a player podcast perspective, because sometimes those can not be so good. But I thought that Grady Jarrett and Kelsey Conway did a good job with that podcast, especially for episode 1 overall.
Where'd you listen to that?
Answer that. I just saw it on Twitter, and then
it's on the YouTube channel.
It's also wherever you listen to your podcast. Like I listen to it on my podcast app on my iPhone.
It's on the Falcons YouTube channel too.
Okay. Yeah, it's like a 55, close to an hour kind of sort of. It's they had certain cutouts. I was gonna watch it. I just been busy, so I'll probably watch it that night or something. It seemed good because you don't really get to hear a lot, especially from players on a team that's really a part of a team. And Atlanta's never really had that like atmosphere around our players. You really think about it. You don't have a lot of players that are open. Like Julio's accounts are a lot. All of his like social media accounts are private. You don't really see what Julio does unless you get it screenshotted.
I've noticed that because I've started to follow players and, player wives, player girlfriends. It's just kind of part of the job. And Matthew Stafford, for instance, does not have any social media, but his wife, Kelly Stafford, is very, very active on social media. But I mean, I also covered Darius Slay in Detroit, and Darius Slay was on social media all of the time, like, and saying a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, going back to when Matt Patricia was let go, the celebratory nature of social media among former Lions players was unlike anything I had ever seen.
But I'll tell you, players can be petty. Like this is like here, like Matt Ryan is not really on time. I see Matt Ryan tweet or say something if like something like dealing with like social injustice, like him giving money to the community for Black Lives Matter, things of that nature. You'll see him tweet something or post something like that, but he don't do it he don't really tweet about what he's going to go get something to eat at and stuff like that. Now we had a player here that was on social media all the time, like Tat McKinley. This man stayed on Twitter. This man stayed on social media.
And we ran him off Twitter quickly.
Well, I think Tat was annoying. Tat was annoying on Twitter because he just kept tweeting stuff like, shut up.
Darius Slay would do that from time to time. But of Falcons players, some of the new players, I mean, Mike Davis is on Twitter a lot, and I covered Brandon Copeland in Detroit. Brandon Copeland is all over the social media, but actually it's more personal finance. So if you're looking for stock tips or financial advice, you will get that from Brandon Copeland's Instagram or Twitter or any of his social media accounts. But it's also pretty legit because he teaches a class at the University of Pennsylvania. He teaches a financial literacy class in the off season there. And he is an editor at Kiplinger's, which is a fairly well-respected financial magazine. And also he's part of the Forbes 30 under 30 this year. So like he knows what he's talking about.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Mike Davis is on Twitter a lot, but he always tweets about like him being on Warzone or him starting camps and stuff. So that's really all you see from him.
So going back to the situation at hand right now, which is the draft. You got difference of opinions, like we just said about Falcons could take quarterback at 4, or we can end up trading back. Or we could stay at 4 and they'll shock the world and pick somebody that we probably didn't even have any thoughts of at all. Here's my thing, and we've been saying this for a while. We done did so many shows talking about the same thing all over again. And we had Terrence Mathis on our show last night, former Falcon. He pretty much said the Falcons want to pretty much do what's best for the organization.
Yeah. I mean, every organization tries to do that. And if you don't, and you're kind of placating fans with the draft pick, that's a recipe for failure. It just is. I mean, like, there's no other way to explain it other than you need to trust your scouts. You need to trust your instincts. You need to trust your board. You need to trust your coaches. You need to trust yourself if you're Terry Fontenot or Kyle Smith or Arthur Smith. Like, you need to trust that because you're the football mind. This is your entire life and your livelihood, frankly, because you get this pick wrong if you stay at 4 and it's something that's going to follow you pretty much your entire tenure in Atlanta. And that's going to be something that's interesting. To me, if I were Terry Fontenot, I would try and trade back. I would absolutely do everything in my power to trade back. But as many GMs have told me in the past, this thing with that is you need a partner to do that. So if no one's interested in who's left in the quarterback frenzy here at 4, then I don't know if they're going to find a partner that works for them. If there are 2 quarterbacks that are highly sought after by some quarterback needy teams, then maybe they can get a good amount to trade back. And then to me, once you trade back, as long as you trade back past like 8 or 9, that's more carte blanche to go ahead and take a defensive player, because I don't think you can take a defensive player at 4. If they take a defensive player at 4, I would highly question what they were doing, because there is not anyone that I've spoken to that says that there is a defensive player that they think is worthy taking at 4, because almost all of the elite players in this draft are offensive players. Now, 3 of them are receivers, which doesn't help the Falcons. One of them is Kyle Pitts, who I think would help the Falcons and would be a very interesting pick. Mm-hmm. Then there are the quarterbacks, and then there's Sewell from Oregon, who, if it were me making the decision, I would potentially go that route, because I think that you lock up one of your tackle spots, whether you end up being your left tackle or your right tackle, for the next decade, and that's going to help Matt Ryan, and that's going to help whoever Matt Ryan's replacement ends up being. But I don't know if they're going to do that. So I don't know what they're going to do. I'm honest in that. And, again, that's part of me covering this team for a month. But Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith have also been pretty quiet. The one thing I will say is don't necessarily buy into seeing, oh, wow, they had 6 people at at Trey Lance's 2 combined pro days. Well, remember, because remember,
I know.
He's played 1 game in 2 years. 1 game. Like, that's it. Like, you just haven't seen him do it. So, and there was no combine. There are no in-person interviews. There are no top 50 visits. So if you are even thinking about taking a quarterback, if you are thinking about taking Trey Lance, you have to go out and see him and send all of those people, because you would be doing yourself a disservice and your franchise a disservice and your owner a disservice and your fan base a disservice by not doing so. That is why I figured that the Falcons would be at everybody's pro day, that could be a top 5 or top 10 pick, because why not? And frankly, anybody in the first round, because if the Falcons get a great deal and trade down, let's say with New England or with Washington, then all of a sudden you're living in that area where you could take a guy like maybe Kwity Paye or a guy like Karamosa and I just butchered his last name, from Notre Dame, or you got
AVT from USC. That's a guard. Right. We need left guard. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of options if they trade back. I think if they trade back, to me, I think you trade back and you take defense, because defense, I think at every level, I know some people were a little critical on Twitter when they're like, why were you very linebacker heavy? I'm like, their front end, the Falcons front end linebackers are really good. Like, that's maybe front end, other than receiver, your best front end part of your team. But you have no depth there. None. And let's be honest, Foye is I think he's a free agent after this year or next year. So you have to, I just don't have that in front of me. And again, I'm still learning.
You're right.
Yeah. So all of a sudden you're like, well, okay, you're going to invest money in him when you also have to invest money in Calvin Ridley, when you also need to pay other players. So that's some of this question of what you need to figure out, and also how do they fit in the defense. So I think at every level of the defense, the Falcons need help. Every level. It's just a matter of when they take certain players. To me, a safety on day 2 would make a lot of sense. And honestly, if they traded back to 9 or 10 and they took a corner, I think that would make a ton of sense too, because I think Caleb Farley is a really good player. I think JC Horn's a good player. And that to me is those are all interesting players that you can't really take at 4, or you shouldn't take at 4. But I think at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you can do.
Yeah. So, all right. And I'm glad you pretty much said your piece on what the Falcons should do at 4. And I'm going to ask you this question. You just say yes or no. The draft, to me, doesn't start at the first overall pick with Jacksonville. The draft, if the Falcons does not trade and we stick at 4, the draft starts at that 4th overall pick.
Kind of. I would actually say I think it starts at 3. Because I think that while we all know San Francisco is going to take a quarterback, I think which quarterback they take can dictate so much else of what happens, including what could happen with the Falcons potentially trading at 4. I truly believe that who they take at 3 will dictate the rest of the top 10.
Unless they pick Mac Jones. But I highly doubt that they're not picking Mac Jones.
Right, but that's the thing. If they pick Mac Jones, then all of a sudden maybe that makes it more tradable, because I think more teams would be interested in Justin Fields or Trey Lance.
Yeah,
I feel like Mac Jones going at 3 just gives Atlanta all the leverage in the world.
Yeah, because every team, oh man, there's still 2 quarterbacks on the table. Let's see who Atlanta can give us that pick. Yeah. If they do that, I just don't see them picking Mac Jones at 3. I just don't see that.
I would agree with you on like logic, except for the fact that if there's one thing I've learned in 8 years of covering the draft and 30 plus years of liking the draft. So I grew up in New York. We were talking about that a little bit pre-show. I went to the draft at least once because I grew up right outside New York City. Like if there's one thing I can tell you about the draft is that it's never predictable and you never know what's going to happen. Much like Daniel Jones going in the top 10 to the Giants a couple years back, or Clelin Ferrell getting drafted by the Raiders really, really high. And it's unpredictable. So I will be if the Niners went anywhere other than quarterback, I would be floored. But if they take any of those 3 quarterbacks, it would not shock me at this point, because I think that we've also seen with what Kyle Shanahan has done in the past, a quarterback like Mac Jones can really thrive in that offense potentially, if he's as good as people think he might be.
So if we pick a guy, we know if we pick a guy like Sewell, that's going to help our offensive line. And I feel like, offense is going to play a little better. Now, we didn't really talk about Kyle Pitts. What's your analysis on Kyle? I like Sewell.
I like Kyle Pitts a lot.
You can't go wrong with Sewell or Pitts. I'm just gonna be honest with you. At that 4th spot, you cannot go wrong with either one.
I would agree. I agree. I agree totally. I actually did an ESPN radio mock draft a couple of hours ago, and I took Kyle Pitts at 4 for the Falcons. I think that Kyle Pitts makes a lot of sense for Atlanta. It might seem like overkill because of Julio and Calvin Ridley, but the reality is Julio Jones is probably in the second half of his career, maybe even the latter half of that second half of his career, considering his contract, or at least with the Falcons. So that is a guy that can all of a sudden be another 1-2 punch guy with Calvin Ridley, assuming that the Falcons hold on to Calvin Ridley, which I don't know why they would not. So additionally, he's a tight end. He's a big blocker. He's a guy that they can then run 2 tight end sets with Hayden Hurst, depending on what they decide on the 5th-year option with Hayden Hurst. That could be a 2-year proposition. I think there's so much that you can do with Kyle Pitts. I actually wrote about how Kyle Pitts would fit in an Arthur Smith offense I think it was like a week ago. And when you see that, and when you hear how it can be from a matchup perspective, and also the fact that really Matt Bowen, my colleague who I talked to for that piece, former NFL safety, the way he described it is his comps for Kyle Pitts are not tight ends, but they're receivers. Plaxico Burress was his comp. And that's just what Kyle Pitts is. He's this hybrid player that I think a lot of teams and a lot of people haven't seen. So they're not exactly sure what to make of him. To me, I am making this comparison, and I'm saying this, that I don't think that he will become this player potentially. But from a size, speed, although he's a little bit slower, but from a height, size, speed situation, he reminds me a little bit of Calvin Johnson.
Ooh.
But I'm not making any sort of predictions like that. And he also runs about a tenth of a second slower in a 40.
You know what? I've said this.
6'6", 240. Mm-hmm. Calvin was 6'5", 231. And like, that's the type of build, and that's the type of prototype receiver that you just don't see all that often in the NFL. And I mean, Kenny Golladay was similar to that too. Plaxico Burress is a very good comp. Like, those types of players, those types of guys with that type of speed are rare. So if you can get one and then build around that player, that's, to me, very, very enticing if you are an offensive-minded coach, which Arthur Smith is.
I've said that Pitts for me remind me of a mixture between Calvin Johnson and Shannon Sharp.
That's actually really, I mean, listen, those are two Hall of Fame players, and if he has that type of career, I don't think any person that with whatever team Kyle Pitts lands on will ever complain one word about Kyle Pitts. But that's the question there, right? Is he's this hybrid wide receiver tight end, unlike what I think a lot of people have seen before. And to me, he's maybe the future evolution of what the position could end up becoming, meaning the tight end position. But I think he's one of the first, and that's what makes him incredibly interesting as a prospect. And you talk to a lot of people I've spoken with, have him as the second best prospect in the draft behind Trevor Lawrence, and you can get the second best prospect at 4. That's not a bad thing. And I've seen in the comments some people frustrated about defense. If you missed that part of the conversation, just taking a defender at 4 is a really difficult thing this year, just because of, frankly, if you're taking a player at 4, that player needs to be an elite of the elite prospect, and there just aren't many of those in the draft. I think if they trade back, that's when defense gets really interesting, and you could be very defense heavy. And you can still go defense heavy on day 2 of the draft, take a safety, take an edge rusher, and kind of make it that way. And really what's going to happen after the draft is I think you'll see the Falcons sign a handful of free agents, not undrafted free agents, but veteran free agents who are still out there. Maybe that's where they get, as you were talking about before the dawn, about needing a guard. That might be where they get their starting, like a left guard is in that pool, because there's a lot of guys out there who have still not signed, as we've seen every year. I think more so this year because of the pandemic. And it wouldn't shock me if the Falcons go kind of bargain shopping there a little bit after the draft to see if they can pick up a couple starters.
Yeah, the Travis, he said, but he favors, and me and him, we talk all the time. The guy that said we need a defense. We talk about trade back. We trade back. You, like, say for instance, you trade with a team like New England, or you trade with a team like Denver. You can get a guy like Micah Parsons. You can get a guy like AVT on the offensive line, or you can get a guy like Jalen Phillips or Russo, or even Pitti for Michigan. Those guys can be solid at that. That's where they pretty much are marked at right now. So you get that, then you have 2 seconds, you have 2 thirds, and you can double up more on defense. I'm fine with that. So,
right, and that's the ideal situation. Like, to me, that's the ideal situation. You trade back, you get more picks, you get more draft capital to help this. I saw someone call it, one of the TV analysts called it a mini rebuild for the Falcons, and I think that's probably a good description for it, at least right now. And then if things go south this year, then it's probably full on, truthfully. So yeah, I think that if you can add a couple more picks, and to me, if I'm Terry Fontenot, I actually want to add more picks if I can in the 2022 draft than this draft, because like that was something that when I covered the Lions in my not so previous life, one of the things I made the most sense to me about the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff trade was they didn't get a first rounder this year. And so people were like, why didn't they do that? Well, because this is the weirdest draft ever, because scouting is just been non-existent
Because of COVID.
because of COVID. So it's all just kind of a lot of shoulder shrugging, frankly. And by 2022, everything I really hope, is back to normal from a scouting perspective, from a going to games perspective. So
and
all of a
watching
sudden,
and having a whole full season in college,
Exactly.
like people hyping up somebody who only played one game, and people hyping up somebody who played 7 games and played teams that was pretty much trash. Like, come on now, like that's not good scouting. And then folks want to get hyped. I don't like pro teams. I just don't. Like
pro days are not helpful. I mean, they are for confirmation, but like I don't think there's going to be a guy out of a pro day that's going to be like going to become like a first rounder. That comes frankly at the end of it. It comes out of like the senior, like the college all-star games and the film.
exactly.
And the combine is kind of like part of confirmation of what you saw, and maybe a guy can really surprise. But we've also seen those workout warriors at the combine, looking at you, Mike Mamula, and that just don't end up working out. And the combine and pro days are all about confirmation. They're not about like. There may be a little bit about information, but if your scouts are good, you have the majority of the information by the time you're getting to the combine. Now, when the point with 2022 also is there's no in-person visits, there's no private workouts, there's no top 50 visits, all of which that's more information. And in some cases, that can be a tiebreaker situation. And to me, if I'm a team, I'm more interested in having a whole bunch of picks in 2022 and 2023. And if I'm the Falcons, I want that because if I don't take a quarterback at 4, then all of a sudden, if I have an extra first rounder, say in 2022, then all of a sudden I might have the draft capital. Say the Falcons end up picking at 9 or 10, means they didn't have a great year, means that they need to get a quarterback because the Matt Ryan era is ending sooner than later. And say the team they trade with is at 21. I'm just throwing these numbers out here. Well, you can package 10 and 21 to maybe go up to 3.
Oh man!
That's what we've been saying. I don't think people understand that.
Haven't I been saying that?
People don't understand that there's other ways to get higher in the draft than lose. I feel like people just think you gotta lose to have a high draft pick. It just makes no sense. Like
tell people this, like, hold on, I'm talking out of frustration. Okay, I've been telling people, oh, we need to get a quarterback this year because we ain't gonna pick this high again. I'm like, if you trade with somebody, okay, you trade with somebody, and then first off, we're not picking this high again. That means we are a better team next year.
Yeah.
What's wrong with being a better team? Okay.
Look at Miami and look at San Francisco. They both had the number 3 pick at some point. Well, yeah, they got it by trade.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, okay, so if we get 2 first-round picks next year and Matt Ryan doesn't do well in 2021 and we see that he does not fit this system with Arthur Smith, you sitting at 2 picks in the first round. You can trade those, you can package those picks and pick your quarterback for next year. There are other quarterbacks that's going to come out.
Well, I'll give you one other part of that too, is that if Matt Ryan doesn't work, you can also package Matt Ryan in a deal to maybe get a first or second round pick, or maybe you package Matt Ryan and one of those 2 first round picks if you trade back, and you still have 2 first round picks because you were able to, 3. There's ways to do this if it doesn't work out with Matt Ryan. Now, I will say right now, I think Matt Ryan's a really good quarterback, and I think that I'm really curious to see what he's able to do in this system. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the health of Calvin Ridley and the health of Julio Jones and whatever they're able to get out of a run game. But I think there's a lot of talent left in Matt Ryan, and I'm curious to see kind of what that looks like. But again, I'm still coming at it from a like kind of 1,000-foot view because I'm just, parachuting kind of into Atlanta at the moment.
Here's the thing with Matt Ryan, okay? He played in so many different – it's been a revolving door offensive coordinators, offensive-minded coaches here in this city, all right? He has yet to get a fair shake of somebody, the continuity that Aaron Rodgers had, the continuity that Drew Brees had, the continuity that Tom Brady had. They never really have to worry about their offensive coordinator leaving them after 2 seasons to go get a better job. You know, like you know this. You covered the Detroit Lions for a minute. Matthew Stafford he suffered the same thing up there in Detroit.
Oh, all right. So, yeah, he did.
Yeah. So I'm not comparing Stafford and Ryan, but what I'm saying is we through it all. Matt Ryan has overseeded all expectations every time there's a new person coming in or a new regime coming in. I feel like he's gonna be fine in this system with Arthur Smith. Like I saw the tape, I'm like, okay, he'll be fine if he caught up with Kyle Shanahan's system. Then it's fine. And look at what we just came from. Dirk Cutter's offense was god awful. And you look at Dirk Cutter's track record, the quarterbacks he had, like in the years he had. Like let's look at Jameis Winston. This man was a turnover machine in Tampa Bay.
Yes.
And Matt Ryan only threw how many interceptions last year? 11? I swore he threw more. And I'm like, that's all we threw?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you one other thing too. Is when Arthur Smith, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is a guy who was a very sought after head coach. Arthur Smith's going to obviously evaluate the quarterback situation. Yeah. Well, one of the things that was happening in Detroit, which is a place that Arthur Smith interviewed, is they were basically explaining to coaches, hey, you might not be with Matthew Stafford because Matthew Stafford has expressed interest in a trade. So if he wanted to go to a place where he was going to start over with a new quarterback, he had 3 options in Detroit, in the Jets, and in Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville seemed pretty locked in on Urban Meyer, but I think the Jets would have been an interesting situation for him, and I think that Detroit would have been an interesting situation for him. I don't know if he would have gotten either one of those jobs, but that's just the truth of it. I think he looked at it, and I think he wanted to work with Matt Ryan. Like that. That's at least how I look at it from.
You know what? You just pretty much told me everything I already knew. Now, I remember Arthur Smith going to Detroit to interview for that job, and he left without a job. He left because he interviewed here in Atlanta, then he went to Detroit, and then he left back, and then he took the job here in Atlanta.
Right, so he was supposed to go on. He was supposed to be on a second. He was actually supposed to go on a second interview in Detroit after Atlanta, and that never happened.
And he declined it. I remember them. So that pretty much tell me that okay, they knew. They put the plan in place. The plan in place in Detroit. Okay, this is what we're gonna do, Smith. We're gonna get rid of Stafford. So you're not gonna have Stafford. We're gonna start a whole new quarterback, or we're gonna trade. They got Goff now. So and
they would have maybe had Goff then, but yeah,
and that didn't appease him that much. So he said, okay, well, I'm not really taking the job here in Atlanta. I'm not saying it, but Arthur Blake pretty much said, okay, this is our plan here for the Falcons. And this is what we're going to do with Matt Ryan. I'm not going to say it out my mouth, but and he said, okay, I'm going to take this job. So, wow.
I mean, listen, we don't know because they can sit there and take a quarterback at 4 and have a different plan. They might have a different plan. There's no doubt about that. And that's one thing they've been very good about. Is being very coy with their intent, but that's smart because that creates trade interest.
Yes,
like I don't like. So all right, I hate to keep making Lions comparisons here, right? But again, very similar situation to the Lions last year. The Lions had the number 3 pick. Well, they basically said, listen, Matthew Stafford's our quarterback. So what does that mean? That means they're not going to take a quarterback, especially because they were in kind of a different situation than obviously the Falcons are now, because you're not going to take a guy that you know isn't going to play next year. So you knew like the Lions were going to take a quarterback. So that hurt your potential trade options. What the Falcons are doing right now by leaving this option open, whether it's a real option or whether it's a giant smokescreen option, is they are creating potential value for themselves if they want to move out of the number 4 pick. Now, they may love one of these quarterbacks, and if they do, they'll probably take him. Because if you feel like he's absolutely your franchise guy, then you're going to take him in the future because you deal with it. But if they don't, then they have other options, as we talked about, and they also potentially have created a scenario where people will believe that they might take a quarterback, so a team's going to maybe trade up and get them. To me, the one thing that hurt them the most was Sam Darnold being traded to Carolina, because if Sam Darnold wasn't traded to Carolina, I think that would have offered a lot of options for them, because teams would have wanted to make sure they got up high enough to make sure that Carolina couldn't even move up to like 6 or something like that.
But and this is the thing, I said this earlier with Jenna was on the show. Like a lot of people, yes, they're talking about quarterbacks, but Giants now they saying they want to trade. A lot of other teams won't so well. A lot of teams won't. Picks as well are not going to make it past 6. They just not.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So
I mean, I don't think past 5.
The Giants, they need a playmaker on their offense for Daniel Jones. The Bengals, they need to protect Joe Burrow.
Right.
All right. Even the Eagles, they need another lineman. Like they had one of the best offensive lines when they won that Super Bowl, but some of those guys now are old now, so they need to bulk up the offensive line again. So, like I said, that's why I've been saying the draft really starts at 4. Excuse me.
Well, no, it does. Like I said, I think it starts at 3, but that's only because the decision the quarterback decision at 3 will play so much else out.
Yeah, I agree. But like I said, I'm just waiting to see what's gonna happen next Thursday.
Me too.
I'm ready. Like that night, it's just gonna be weird. It's gonna be one of those nights I'm just not gonna get any sleep, because either I'm gonna be. I already know what's gonna happen. I just know, like, it's just being a fan of this team for 33 years, and now for the past, I don't know, so many years now I've been covering this team, doing podcasts and everything, right? Like, I just have a feeling that it's gonna work out for the best interest of the Atlanta Falcons organization, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
We shall see. I mean, I'm curious to see how this all shakes out on a lot of different levels, because I think for the Falcons it goes beyond the first round too. I think that day 2 and day 3 are going to be incredibly important for them and what their short-term success is, frankly. So it's going to be it's a way more important draft than it probably should be for Atlanta, but I think that if they hit on enough, if Terry Fontenot hits on the right number of picks, say he hits it on 5 starters out of this draft, then that sets them up so much better than they might be otherwise. And that's obviously very easy logic to say, but it's just the truth of it when you're looking at a roster right now that still only has what I think they're getting close to like 50 players, but a lot of them are on 1-year deals. They're on 1-year deals, and so you're setting yourself up to, like we were talking about before, either completely implode everything after this year, or you found enough pieces and you can start building.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The probability of you hitting all your picks are not good. Like, you're not going to hit, like, at best, most teams hit 60% of their picks.
Yeah.
But if the Falcons want to hit we only got 9 picks. Yeah, 9 picks are pretty much out of the ordinary. Like, that's more picks, but it's not really a lot of picks. So if you trade back and you get 12 picks, your probability of hitting on more players are good, and then you have the players that can fill in those depth, the depth, and then you have you going into the season with a good roster.
Potentially, I mean, listen, if you're going to a season with a rookie-heavy roster, that's always dangerous as well. But you're setting this is about more than just 2021 with what they're trying to do here. This has to be really about 2021 and 2024, and that's what you're looking at, because that's what their contracts obviously go a little bit further. But you want, as if you are Arthur Smith and you are Terry Fontenot, you want to be playing your best football in 2023 and 2024, because that's when discussions about extensions happen. Like, everyone understands what the situation is. Like 2021, if it doesn't go well, okay, you're a first-year coach, first-year GM, COVID, things are virtual again. 2022, hey, maybe breaking in a new quarterback. Okay, well, 2023, 2024, that's when, are you going to keep your job? That's when
ain't no excuses.
Exactly.
Yeah, ain't no more excuses at that
you
point.
want to build so you know that your team is starting to crest at that time.
All right. Well, y'all have anything else to share?
No, I think he answered all the questions.
Yeah. Anything. So if we do trade down, what team do you think we'll trade down with?
Oh man, I don't know. There's so much unknowns there. I mean, listen, there are the obvious ones, right? Denver, New England, Washington. Like those are the obvious ones. I think there could be some teams that are interested. Like again, if like LaDon was saying, if Philly is in love with Sewell, maybe they try to jump back up, or if who knows what Miami's thinking. Miami may be on the move again. I don't know if Miami would move up, but then maybe they end up being on the move. I think that there's so much that can happen, and there are so many different things that we aren't even thinking about right now because again, a couple of draft analysts I've spoken with say that this is the most unpredictable draft they've ever had because of all the things that we've been talking about over the past hour. So it would not shock me if a mystery team came out of nowhere and decided to trade up into 4 because you know what? Who knows? Maybe that team is in love with Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using that as an example. And like they really want Jamar Chase and they want to make they don't know if he'll get past 6. Right. Or maybe even past 5, because if Joe Burrow, if they want to get a receiver for Joe Burrow, why not go get the guy who made a ton of plays with him in 2019? So that's another possibility if there's a receiver that someone's in love with. So there was just so many different options that I don't really know. But if you were talking quarterback, I think you're looking at Carolina. I think you're looking at New England. I think you're looking at Washington. And those would be the 3 that I think to me make sense. Maybe, but I don't know if they have the capital to do it.
They add Khalil Mack.
They're not going to trade Khalil Mack. I mean, all right, you know what? How about this? I would be highly, highly surprised if they traded Khalil Mack. I can't see that happening. I mean, listen, if the Falcons could get Khalil Mack, I mean, the Falcons should absolutely take Khalil Mack. Of course, they would probably have to then cut 7 players to afford Khalil Mack. So that's the other reason why that's probably not going to happen. The Falcons just can't afford Khalil Mack. Beyond the fact that Chicago's not going to trade Khalil Mack, why would you trade Khalil Mack? Just saying. He's a great player. Why would you trade him?
Yeah.
My general philosophy, and you'll probably hear me say this if you have me on again, and depending on how things go, I'm a big believer in you don't get rid of good players. You learn how to work with good players. And coaches that learn how to work with good players generally have more success than those that don't, that are very rigid in scheme only.
Yeah.
Like that's the truth. I mean, listen, I just left a place that had that problem. But if you are too rigid in scheme only, and I don't get the sense that Arthur Smith is that, or Terry Fontenot is that, that's where you run into problems. If you are willing to say, I'm going to coach the players that I have and make the best of it, then that's when you potentially have the chance for success.
All right. Well, hey, man, I think that's pretty much all the draft talk we have for the night. That's pretty much all we can talk about right now.
I totally understand.
Yeah, but hey, I appreciate it so much for you coming on, man. Once again, let everybody know who you are, where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on way too many social media platforms at Mike Rothstein. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm still figuring out exactly what I'm going to do with that.
What's Clubhouse?
It's
you on
it's
Clubhouse? It's like locker room.
Yeah,
it's like locker room.
Yeah, it's like locker room.
Oh, locker room. Okay, bet.
Yeah, so it's similar to that. I think I'm on Locker Room as well. I've never used that, but so a lot of these places I'm on there at Mike Rothstein. I'm on Facebook at Michael Rothstein Journalist. I try to be active with fans and interact and engage with fans as much as I can, because y'all are the reason that I get a paycheck to write about football and write about the players and the coaches that are in football for a living because of the fans. So I'm very cognizant of that, and I try to answer, all the questions that you have. So feel free to follow me on social media. I'm happy to engage, and I really look forward to kind of starting down this journey of covering the Falcons, and hopefully y'all have me back again. This was a blast.
Hey, man, anytime, man. We will highly appreciate you coming back on the show, so that's not a problem.
Oh, it'll be my pleasure.
ALC Bournemouth, Sydney. Hey guys, greeting for Sydney, Australia. Hey man, thank you so much for tuning in. But we got listeners from all around the world. FILA is
I love
worldwide.
Sydney, Australia. I was in Australia in 2015. I absolutely love Sydney, Australia. I love Melbourne. Aussie rules football is a fun thing to watch, and if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. It's just fun.
I haven't been yet. My girlfriend, she went to Australia, and like from the story she told me, she had a great time. So hopefully I can get down there, you know, and enjoy it. But I know King, he ain't having no plans going down there because he's scared of the spiders and the crocodiles and platypus.
Oh, they got bats too, man. They got bats.
They got
I was in a quick story about that. And this is, by the way, I also commend y'all. This is the most not off the rails a podcast I've ever done, because usually I tell very random stories and it goes completely off the rails. So good job keeping me in check. But I was in Australia, and I was in this place called Cairns, which is where you basically have to go to the Great Barrier Reef and to go to the Daintree Rainforest. And they were known for bats. And what would happen is at sundown, you would all of a sudden like see all these bats fly over the city. And like there were like rumors of like bats darting down and like, you know, kind of attacking people. And I'm sitting there, I'm at the pool, like at my hotel, and I'm just sitting there reading a book. And all of a sudden it's getting dark, and I look up and I see all these things flying, and it's bats. And like I booked it like hiding from these bats. So like no joke. Like the bats are no joke in Australia at all. But Australia is a wonderful country. It is one of my favorite places I've been in the world. I've been to 20 countries and counting. Hopefully going to add to that number soon here once COVID restrictions lift a little bit. But Australia has been one of my favorite places. So that's a long answer for welcome.
All right, thank you. All right. Hey, appreciate you coming on again. Hey, everybody who watched this live, thank y'all for tuning in live. If you watch this at a later time, let us know what you think about the show in the comment section. We will hit you back up. Don't forget, after this show, that they will be King and Tyrone. They will be doing the King's Realm, a post-game Hawks.
Yes, we will. The Hawks about to get this win, 108-91. So you know we about to be hyped. It's been a great day all day. Hawks.
Well, Braves just lost to the Yankees 3-1. So
I have really and truly. There was a picture talking about like what team would you get rid of? The Braves
don't do it.
Man, man. Come on, man.
Look, I didn't grow up on baseball. Like, I'm not a baseball guy.
Bro,
like, if anything, they're the ones that are going to have to leave. They're really a Cobb County team, but we're going to talk
about stop, man. I'm getting rid of the Bulldogs. I'm not a Georgia fan.
Right. Bulldogs.
Whoa.
I'm not a Bulldogs.
Really the Cobb County
when it comes to college, it's Michigan Wolverines all day. Go blue. Hail to the victors.
All right. Bye.
Sorry, it's amazing. I'm coming down to Atlanta. I still can't escape Michigan.
You ain't going to go with me? You ain't escaping Michigan. I'm going to stay, like, my timeline, I stay talking about Michigan. Like, I'm talking about, it ain't just football, Michigan football. I support the whole school. They got gymnastics. The gymnastics team just won. Yeah, they just won the national title. And I tweeted about Go Blue. I support everything. I don't care if they got a bowling team. I will support it.
They do not have a bowling team. I can confirm that they do not have a bowling team.
Wow, that's messed up. All right, y'all.
Georgia just won the equestrian championship. I mean, we go pull out championships. Georgia just won the equestrian championship. We go bring out championships.
Of course, they're gonna win the equestrian championship. In the country,
we riding horses down here.
It's horses everywhere. Ain't no horses up there in Michigan like that.
It's too cold for horses.
Exactly. Anyway, so hey, if y'all new to the channel, y'all know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share this content out with other Atlanta sports fanatics. Hit us up in the comment section. As always, come holler at your hometown sports podcast. It's another episode of The Don's Favor, here with your boy The Don and my co-host King and Tyrone, special guest Michael Rothstein. Y'all have a great evening. See y'all again.
10 minutes.
Yep.
Dang, Don, you moving slow.